All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lean Into Your Superpower. I am Zaina, and I'm here with,
I'm Kathleen.
and we are the Lion and the Ram, and we've built an entire podcast on harnessing and utilizing your superpower.
That's right. Let's get into it. Okay, Zaina.
Right. What is our wish, Kathleen?
What is our wish?
Right.
Our wish is to create a safe place for our listeners and our community to talk and to develop our knowledge of our superpower, knowing what your superpower is, how you can connect that to your success, and how we can all help each other grow professionally, personally, and financially.
Right. So last week we discussed the imposter syndrome, your superpower kryptonite. I guess it was, yeah, well, we recorded it last week, but it was posted 2 weeks ago, but, or I should say, last podcast, as a means to finding your superpower and how it is key to recognize what's holding you back and draining your authentic self. So today we are tackling fueling your superpower, leaning into discomfort, right? As a means of igniting, your authentic self. So we are super excited for you all to be here with us today. First, what we do, we like to do what we call a check-in, right? So just kind of checking in with each other, seeing how we're doing with our crazy lives. How are you today, Kathleen?
I'm good today. We've had a busy weekend. We had my middle child, my son, my only boy. He turns 10 tomorrow, but we did his birthday stuff this weekend. So what we did for him is we did a yes day where he kind of gets to pick everything that we do for the day within reason. So we're not like spending $1,000 at Target. We're not jumping off of buildings, but he can pick where we have breakfast. And then, he wanted to go to main event and play video games. So we did that. And so just kind of that sort of thing. And so I had a parenting experience that I know every parent can relate to where, one moment you are like parent of the year and you're like, I am rocking this parent thing. I am so successful. Everyone should take notes from me because I have it down. I have it down now. I shall write a book. And so we did that and it was going well. And we went to a movie and all that sort of stuff. And at the end of the day, he wanted to go to dinner at this Mexican restaurant so he could have their hamburger. His favorite meal is their hamburger at the Mexican restaurant. But okay, fine. So we go there and we have our friends meet us there, by the way. And one of them might be listening today. Shout out to you for riding this wave. And so we were sitting there, and then all of a sudden, my son starts to have a meltdown in the middle of the restaurant in front of my friends. And it went from 0 to 100 in about half a second. And bless my friends who pretended like they did not see this. And it was just time for them to go. And so they graciously left us to deal with this mess. And so the day ended, it started with us, at IHOP and everybody was super excited. And it ended with my son yelling at me in the middle of a parking lot in 20-degree weather. And me thinking, okay, well, I have now fallen from the zenith of parenthood into the pit of parenthood. And, at the end of the day, when everything was calmed down, he apologized to me for yelling at me, which was sweet because he's 10 and nobody made him apologize. And we came together and resolved it, but it's still, it was such a letdown because the day had been so good, and you wanted it to like continue on, and then you're just kind of like, well, great.
Right.
But we were all fine today, so we all recovered.
The roller coaster ride, right?
Right.
Of the kids and, and just the day, you just never know, no matter what you do, no matter what intentions you have. And I think that's the thing that I struggle with the most is I have such expectations and I don't think they're that high, but everyone says they're high. Maybe they are, but I've turned, especially now after having kids, my expectations have gotten a lot lower. Right? Can we get in the car and travel somewhere without killing each other? Things like that, or having
Yes.
arguments, and then it's like, and then things are going well, and then you just never know, and it just it's,
I know.
just like that. And then you feel like you're coming off the scene at the high of a great parent. And then now all of a sudden
I know.
it's
Yep. It's a
ups
roller
and downs of
coaster.
life, right? So how do you like deal with it? How do you,
You know, I consider myself to be somewhat emotionally immature, and I'm working on it. I'm definitely not perfect. You know, my son is a lot more sensitive than I am. So for him to be yelled at is a very big thing.
right,
Um, it's very upsetting for him. For me to be yelled at isn't that big of a deal. Um, Now, if a kid's yelling at me, that's disrespectful. Disrespect to me is much worse. But he was frustrated, and I knew he was frustrated, and that's where it was coming from.
right,
Um, so, but I do have these moments of just immaturity and where I, can feel myself reacting in a way that if my child was reacting in the same way, I would be getting on to them. And it makes me, it doesn't make me feel great as a parent, but I know that, being aware of these things is the first step to being able to try to turn it around. And I think having a good relationship with your kids goes a long way. And by that, I mean, my kids know that I love them.
right,
And my kids know we have fun times together often. We joke with each other. My kids are fluent in sarcasm. So, we can like rib each other and have a good time that way. So I think kind of having that as a basis allows us to be able to kind of heal from these other little wounds that we give each other a little bit faster. And I do try to use humor to kind of lighten the moment. My husband and I both do that. And we do it with each other. My husband and I do it with each other. And we apologize to each other, but we don't actually apologize to each other. So when we apologize, when we apologize, we say, "I'm sorry you were offended."
I'm gonna use that. I kind of like
and,
that.
and we know that the other person is apologizing, but we really don't want to, and that is our way of trying to make it better. So
Right,
when we have that understanding about each other, so we're not perfect, we're not a perfect family, but I feel like, when you have some love and have a really kind of good loving base, it helps you kind of move over those little
right.
humps a little bit faster. So
It's about growth, right? Not
it
perfection.
is,
We got to
it's
keep
a work in
reminding ourselves
progress.
that.
Yeah.
And speaking of growth, right? This is like a new year. We're now about 2 months into the year or so, and it's time to kind of shed our old skin to grow. That's just kind of what I think about when I think of I think of nature and animals. I know it's snakes, but I think of like the shedding process. In order to grow, you got to get rid of the old to
Right.
welcome the new, and
Yes.
it's really all the emphasis on today's podcast is how do we shed our old skin, so to speak, or our old mindset to be able to grow, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we do that? And this is about fueling your superpower. I really think that you need to do this if you want to really get to the next stage in life or to really go into your authentic self and purpose. And that's through challenges.
Absolutely. I don't know of any other way to grow besides meeting challenges and being stretched. I mean, when I think of challenges, and this is not something that I had planned to speak on, but when I think of growth, I actually think of a muscle.
Hmm.
And the way that we grow muscle is that we stress it and we tear it a little bit. So when you're building that muscle, you're creating little tears. And when those tears heal, that muscle is stronger and it's bigger and it's able to carry more weight. And so when you're growing muscle, that is the process of it. And I can't think of anything better of a image in my mind than that with growth, because I have never grown so much as when I've been through trials and tribulations.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. it's actually, they're beginning to find out that it's actually is kind of like a muscle in your brain that most people don't know that. And there's a lot of recent, I'm talking about the last, I would say 3 years or so, research on this. They found a structure called the anterior mid cingulate cortex. Okay. And I hope I pronounce it correctly. I'm going to say AMCC for short. And I'm going to put in the show notes, there's lots of articles. I'm going to just put one by the National Institute of Health. And then from there, you can go and see many other articles about this, about the actual research on this. And what they found rather, is that that little, like that structure literally in your brain plays a central role in establishing tenacity.
Mm,
And it plays a central role, tenacity plays a central role in achieving goals. And this is
mhm.
key, right? When people do something, so how do you get tenacity? And they found out that it's not about working more,
Right.
it's about that little area in your brain grows bigger when you do things that you do not want to do. So it's not about adding more work, but it's about taking action on the things you don't want to do. And now when that brain area gets bigger,
Mhm.
um, and it gets larger and grows larger in people that confront challenges that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, and the larger this area gets, they're finding, the more motivated you will be to achieve a desired goal. So it's absolutely like building a muscle, right? You
Really
can't,
interesting.
isn't that interesting?
It is. It's so
As I was
interesting.
doing
Yes.
research for this podcast, I was like, this is so interesting. It's like, it's something that I always knew was true, but now there's actual brain science,
Science. Yeah,
right?
it's interesting because I'd seen a quote and it really struck me. And now we have science apparently backing it up. What I see on social media, it was this quote that said, "The thing you're avoiding is the thing you should be doing." And
Right,
this is exactly what you're saying is like these things we don't want to do are the things we should be doing in order for us to take ourselves to the next level.
right, right. So people are like, well, I don't want to do something until I get motivated. Well, I'm telling you, you're not going to get
Mm,
motivated until you
mhm.
actually do it, until you actually challenge yourself, right?
Right.
So you got to build like you're not going to get muscles by just looking at the gym or saying, "Oh, I want to be in shape."
Right.
You have to actually go. You may not be motivated. Who's like
Well,
whoever,
isn't there something about not acting yourself into the person you want to be rather than thinking yourself into acting into that person?
right,
Like
right,
that's what actually creates the change in you is the physical manifestation of what you're doing rather than, oh, I'm going to get my mind right first. And it's like, no, actually you should probably be doing those things. And so when I'm thinking of where I want to be, I sit myself down and I think, okay, how does the person I want to be, how do they act? What are the things they do with their day?
right,
What do they do? And I try to get my mind around what are the actions I need to take in order to be this person that I want to be.
right.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say that because I literally have the quote right here on my computer. And I don't know who said it, but I wrote it down. It's easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking
Mhm.
than thinking yourself into a new way of acting.
That's the
Right?
one.
That's
That's
the
the one
one.
I was thinking of.
So
Yes. And I think that's true. I think that's true because I have tried a number of times to do it the other way, change my train of thought into, well, I need to, in whatever, and I'm trying to think of a good scenario, but in whatever position I'm trying to move into, trying to think that way first. But what's really taken me to the next level is when I take the step, even if I don't know what I'm going to say, or I don't know what the next step is supposed to be, but if I move towards, then that is what creates much more momentum and growth than sitting and thinking about it and trying to get ready.
right. And the key is not just working more, not just doing.
Right.
It's all about literally doing the thing that you do not want to do. It's like you
Yes.
gotta really lean into and literally seek out
Mhm.
discomfort.
Yes.
And I
You know,
know it's so
this strikes a
hard.
well, this strikes a chord with me with something that we've done together where, you're my business coach and you help me, get to where I need to be. And we've done a lot of growing together and a lot of discussions, and they're not always discussions I want to have. But I don't particularly like to talk about numbers.
Right.
My brain doesn't like that. It's just not something that's my strong suit. It's not something I've ever been good at. So I think that's why I don't enjoy it and I have avoided it. But I know also that that is the key for me to know what's happening with my business and for me to grow. I have to know my numbers.
Right.
So we sat down one time and I said, my goal for this year is to fall in love with my numbers.
Right.
And that I don't love my numbers. I haven't gotten there yet. But I'm doing better. And I don't have the same feeling about that as I used to. And it's definitely the thing that I focused on has started to grow and improve.
Right.
So definitely, yeah.
So we all have things, we all got areas that make us uncomfortable. Like we all know what that is. And instead of sticking our head in the sand, pretending it doesn't exist, pretending it's, just go on its own, right? We have to seek it out and deal with it
Yep.
the best way we can. And it's not going from 0 to 100. It's not like, okay, well, I'm just gonna, it's gonna be perfect. I'm gonna deal with it perfect because then you'll never act on it. It's just taking the first little teeny itty bitty baby step, right?
Right.
You know, for you, for instance, was just, hey, let's open up our books and just look at them and see what the story
Right.
tells us and not attach emotion to it.
Right.
Like it is what it is. It's not about, going from wherever you are to where you want to be immediately, right?
Right. That's not going to happen.
It's about just taking the little step because this is another, research thing that it takes people at least 1,000 times of doing something repetitively before they become competent at it. So you're not going to just be competent at anything. So 999 times you're going to fail. You're going to do it wrong. You're going to
Yeah.
mess up. And it really doesn't get until you get to the 1,000th time of trying something,
Right.
typically speaking, you're not going to be competent at it and you gotta be okay. And so what you have to do is just start with that one. Start
Yes.
with that one.
Well, and this segues directly into what I kind of wanted to, people always talk about what does it mean to be uncomfortable? You need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. But I kind of wanted to get a little bit granular on what do we mean by being uncomfortable,
Right.
and kind of flesh that out a little bit. Because when we're talking about being uncomfortable, we're talking about taking a step into something that you're not used to doing, that you don't feel is your strong suit, that is outside of your comfort zone, but it's something you need to do. This isn't just something random that you're like, oh, I'm not used to doing this, so I'll just go do this thing. This needs to be something that you need to do and that will drive your growth. That's the thing you need to do. And so when you're starting this thing, just like Zaina said, this whole 1,000 rep sort of thing, when you're uncomfortable and you're doing this, it's that feeling of uncertainty when you're taking that step. It's that feeling of a lack of self-confidence. You're not going to feel confident at all. And then when you do it, it's going to be that poor initial execution. It's not going to go well the first time. It's going to be messy. And that's okay. That's where people usually quit. They do it the first time and they go, I'm not doing that again. That was so uncomfortable and it was awful and I sucked at that. I'm never doing it again.
Right.
But that you're wasting that opportunity. That's that first step that you took to try to figure out this thing that you need to figure out. So I'm going to encourage whoever is listening that when you're in this process and you've taken this step, that poor initial execution is a gift to you, because that is where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to be able to fine tune your process and your technique. And that's where you're going to learn what you're missing. So please don't miss the gift of failing right there and being uncomfortable, because that's what it is. And I did find a quote that I liked. You'll see as you listen, I love quotes. A quote that spoke to me that I liked is by, and I don't know if I say his name right, Epictetus, which is a Greek philosopher. And he said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid.
Right.
And you're going to feel that way at first,
Right.
but that's okay. Sit in it for a little bit. This is where the growth happens.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to just flesh out a little bit what that looks like and what that feels like when you're in it.
Right. So I'll take what you said and I'll even add to that. Other than just feeling uncomfortable or anxiety, I want you guys to think about a place that you have a lot of fear around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, oh, I don't want to do it or whatever. Like if you are really fearing something, if you're going down a path and you're terrified, you know
Mm-hmm.
you're on the right path. And that is exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I am too.
Because it's so true and it's so hard for people. People want to be like, oh, I want to feel good, and this is making me feel bad, so I must not be on the right track. And what I'm telling you, it's the exact opposite. If what you're on is not going to kill you, like literally, okay, like
Right.
then you're on the right track because the fear is telling you wouldn't be afraid of something that you didn't need to grow in.
Right.
Right? So, one telltale sign that you're on the right track, that how you said, how do we know how to be comfortable being uncomfortable, is if you have a lot of fear and or anxiety, but particularly fear, right? And it's not going to be pretty, and it's going to be you're going to be it's going to be very, like we said before in one of our messy. It's going to feel horrible. It's not going to feel good. You're going to get up, you're going to fall, you're going to have to do it again,
Right.
but that is what adversity is. That's what increases that brain area in your brain, that increases tenacity, and that's what gets you to be motivated. If you're not motivated, I don't know what I want to do, I'm not motivated. That's what gets you to be motivated to
Right.
achieve your goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no magic pill. You're not going to be able to skip this. There's no magic wand
No.
you can wave, right? To
Right.
get you to be motivated. If you want to be motivated, do it first. The
Yeah.
doing is way more important than the motivation, right? So
Well,
it's not just, and it's not just doing, here and there. It's
right.
the consistency of it.
Right. I was going to say, for me, I feel like motivation is, I mean, it's fleeting because motivation is in those moments where things are going good and you can finally start to see kind of the progress. But before, for me anyway, before that motivation hits, I've got a period of that consistent slugging along to try to make this work and get to where I really believe in something. Let's say one of my businesses or something, I believe this will work. I've got to keep pushing along, pushing along, and pushing along. And then all of a sudden, you'll have this breakthrough where you can see this is working. That's when the motivation hits. But motivation to me is emotional and it's fleeting.
Right,
And what really gets you there is that discipline, like you said, of the consistency.
right,
And that's what I'm trying to apply to my life is the consistency of being disciplined and doing what I need to do because I know, instant gratification isn't going to help me. It's the long term. I'm playing the long game. So for my long term investment in whatever it is I'm looking at, that's what I need to do is do that consistent work. So I like the term motivation, but I also don't like it in a way because it comes and goes. And if you rely on how you feel, you're never going to have that consistent path that's going to get you where you want to be.
right. So just to kind of sum up what we're saying here is the one thing that people do not tell you is that you do not need to be motivated to fuel your superpower. Okay.
Right. Hmm.
You need to be consistent.
Right. So you need to make a decision, not have a feeling.
Right. And people who have hard time with decisions, you got to understand that the only bad decision is what?
No decision,
Is not
which
making,
is really a decision.
right. Is not making one. Just
Yeah.
make it. What's the worst that could possibly happen?
Right.
You're not going to die.
No,
If you're not doing something super risky, okay, you're not going to die.
most of us are not doing
But
that.
the fear that comes from childhood, and that's a whole other podcast about terror barriers and all of that, subconsciousness and all of that. wants to stop you because it's uncomfortable, it's strange, you've never done it before.
Right. I come across that in my business a lot. We'll come into, we'll come up against something that we've never dealt with before, right? And we don't really know what the best path is. So I'll say, well, let's do this. Let's try this. And there's always this hesitance if we don't really know if it's going to work. But what if it doesn't work? Well, then we won't do that anymore, right? We won't, but we know it's wrong. But the thing is we have such a fear of wrong, and I just want to get rid of that. It, who cares if it's wrong, unless then you figured out a way not to do it. I hate that keeps us from actually moving forward and making a decision, because you feel like you're safe. I haven't made a decision and I'm not wrong, but you actually have made a decision. You've made a decision not to act.
Right. Our society, particularly, there's this like huge fear of failure, right? Particularly in high achieving people, high achieving women. They don't want to, you know, and the thing is anytime you're around, and I think I've mentioned this in another podcast, around anybody who's truly successful, right? You
Mhm.
always hear they fail their way to the top. It's
Yes.
about really leaning into that, and it's not really failure. I change it around and say it's challenges, right?
Yes.
Because you need those. Because
Right.
if you don't do them and quote fall on your face,
Right.
you're never going to learn. And if you
No.
don't learn from it, you can't pivot and keep, getting there. And there's no like, well, I'm going to sit there and think for weeks and weeks and plan it out just so every possible scenario, because that's how I used
Right.
to be when I was practicing law. And lo
Mhm.
and behold, every single time there was always something that I didn't anticipate. And I would,
Yes.
and I was so scared of failing, especially when you're in front of a judge or you have so much on the line and your client's paying you thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
There's just such a fear there.
Right.
But we gotta just be okay with that and just say to ourselves,
Right.
yeah, I'm not, but me failing has allowed me to learn. And guess what? I'm never ever going to do that again. Or now I know better. Or now, I can pivot. But you can't do that unless you do it.
Right. And I think that once you step out and you start doing these things, and you just get rid of the worry of being wrong, I think that will start to build the confidence that you can pivot. You can figure it out. It's okay if you don't know the answer this time. You've tried this, it's not right. Okay, we'll try something else. That will help build that confidence that you can figure this out.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you said about emotions, right? Being kind
Mhm.
of led by your emotions. I think women, especially, tend to, we allow our feelings to dictate our actions.
Right.
I see it quite a bit in the work I do, especially when it comes to quitting, right? When they
Mhm.
feel like so much and you're just like, I'm not saying men don't want to quit too, but it's just like it's more. This is again totally generalizations, and I hate generalizing, but I want us to know, especially as women, right, that we can feel all those things
Yeah.
and still do them anyway. You
Right.
don't have to feel perfect for you to whatever. I know you used to, sing on stage, you to get up on
Yeah.
that stage. You don't have to not feel anxious before you ask for whatever it is you want, a raise,
Right.
whatever it is, or quit a job or whatever you have to do to
Right.
get you to where you want to be. You don't have to just be sure of yourself to go before you go on a diet, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You don't have to not be feeling overwhelmed before you apply for that job or take that test or whatever. You know, something I heard high achieving women say is, you ask yourself, what would someone who's not afraid do?
Mm.
And that's a little bit what you were referring to about when you think of people, that you want
Yeah,
to be like. It's kind of the same along those same grounds.
it is. It is. That's so interesting.
And what that tells you when you look at, when you put it from that perspective, is that tells you that if you do it anyway, the fear is going to go away. The fear is from the unknown.
Well, the fear is worse than actually doing it. I know that because I do it. I will, I'll feel the feelings. So let's say I have a client, and I need to fire them as a client because it's just not working, and it's a volatile relationship, and we're getting yelled at and all sorts of things. And I know that I need to get on the phone with them and I need to fire this client. I don't want to do that. It is not fun for me. I do not like it. I will dread that phone call, but I will still do it because
Right.
I know I need to. And honestly, the the dread leading up to it is so much worse than actually doing it.
Right.
It's so much worse. And you just do it anyway. I mean, you can feel the anticipation, you can feel the dread, you can feel whatever it is, but you shouldn't let that hold you back. I don't know why we've decided that if we feel dread of something or we feel like we don't want to do something, that means we shouldn't do it. Sometimes that means we should be doing it. And I think that's what you said about the fear.
Right. And I not should you not sometimes rather you got to do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it. That's
Mhm.
the only way you're going to grow. That's the
Right.
only way you're
Right.
going to grow. So it's not just about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and I do use that quite a bit. It's literally seeking out discomfort
Right.
and putting yourself in those situations that you really don't want to be in.
Mhm.
We're talking
Right.
about a new year, new
Yep.
you. You want to really have a new you. You really want to make change and do make change quickly. And that's
Yeah.
what I've realized. The more you put yourself in discomfort, the
Yes.
quicker you're going to get to where you want to be.
Right.
Right?
Right. I totally agree. It's so, for me, honestly, putting myself out there in this podcast as a personal person
Right.
is uncomfortable for me. But I feel like I have so much to give to people, and I feel like this is the way that I can give back and help, that I am stepping through that discomfort
Right.
to try to connect with the people who are listening to this. So, as we are talking about being uncomfortable, I am actively
Being
doing what,
uncomfortable.
yes, I'm actively doing what I'm telling you all that you need to do. So, part and parcel picture right here. This, I am actively doing that because I feel like I've been through so much in my short life. Um, and I feel like it would be a waste if I didn't share all these things that I've learned with everyone. And like I said, I'm not an expert by any means, but I have been through some things, and I have, what is it? AMCC something. AMC movie
AMCC,
theaters.
yes.
AMCC. I have developed that part of my brain quite a bit with all of the things that I've gone through, and we'll get into. I mean, those things will come up later throughout the podcast. But I'm actively doing that now so that I can reach out to our community and help other women. So don't let it stop you. Don't let it stop you.
Right. And just, I mean, don't overthink it. Just think about the baby step. Whatever your fear is, you're talking about your financial, lack of financial, whatever prowess.
Yeah.
So it's not about like being accountant. Okay. It's about like, what
Right.
is the first step? Well,
Right.
being open to sharing my financials with other people,
Right.
not keeping it a secret, right? Not having that
Mhm.
shame associated with it, whatever that is.
Right.
And it's funny that you say, you're referring back to the AMCC region or whatever, that area of the brain, is that the data what also shows is that not only do you got to build that up, but if we don't continue to invest in things that are hard
Mhm.
and doing, the uncomfortable things,
Mhm.
um, not only do go not our will to live they're beginning to find out literally begins to dissipate.
Really?
Yes, it's so
Mm.
interesting. It's not just, yes, you want to build it up and do the hardness so you can, be motivated to achieve your goal, but they're even finding that it's associated with a will to live.
Isn't that interesting? Because it kind of feeds into that discussion about grit, and they talk about, when you're talking about the will to live, you think about these people that have been in these, survivor kind of situations. And the people that make it are literally the people who will not let go, right? They're the people that will not let go. And I just think that's so interesting because it's these people, and I find that it's a parallel. You might not, you might be thinking this is extreme, but to me, it's a parallel in thinking The people that succeed in business don't let go. They don't stop. They keep going. The people that survive these survival situations, they don't let go. They keep going. It's not because they're better skilled. It's not because they have all of this knowledge about survival or whatever. It's just because they wouldn't give up.
Right.
You know, I mean, some 12-year-old girl fell from an airplane in the 1970s and spent 10 days in the jungle and lived.
Right.
How is that possible? She didn't give up. I mean, it's just kind of amazing. And if you can train your brain to get to that level, like that's pretty awesome that we could do that,
Yeah.
and that we're able to, I could actively take steps to build that in myself.
Yeah.
Like that's awesome. I don't have to be born with it. I can develop it.
Yes, isn't that interesting? That takes
Oh,
it to
that's
a whole
awesome.
other level. I wasn't
Yeah.
even aware of this until I started doing research for this podcast. So this takes it to a whole other level of a
Yeah.
biological, it's not just, oh, have the gumption and just do it. But now
Yeah.
we know it's literally like building a muscle exactly in your brain. We are
Yeah.
literally manufactured biologically, spiritually, whatever you want to call it, to grow and to get better and continue getting better for the rest of our life, right?
Right.
You
Right.
know, um, there's this other saying, and I know there's a lot of sayings, but sayings to me is what kind of goes into my brain. It's easier
Mhm.
for me to like refer back to the sayings than to like think of a whole like paragraph. But changing nothing changes nothing, right?
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm
Mhm.
saying the saying right, but that's basically what it is. So, or doing nothing changes nothing, or whatever that saying
Right.
is, take the risk. The person who never risks it, who never puts themselves out there, even if they're comfortable and even if all their needs are being taken care of, at the end of the day or at the end of your life, they're going to have a nagging sense that more is or was
Yes.
possible.
Yes. Yes. It's funny that you say that because as I was thinking about this topic, that is what I ultimately got to in my thought process was, this is a continual process and growth. And when you push yourself to a new level, you're at some point going to be comfortable at this new level. You're no longer uncomfortable. Now it's time to push to that next level of discomfort. And it's a continual process. And discomfort can be hard, but so is regret.
Right.
And I would rather walk through temporary discomfort rather than live with lifelong regret that I didn't even try. To
Right.
me, that is so much worse. And I would rather just try and fail. And at least I tried. And then, you know, to me, it's an adventure, honestly. I don't want to live an ordinary life. So to me, to try is to try to have an adventure. And what better life can you try to have than that? Is to have this adventure. And it gives me all of these experiences and this growth, like you said. And as you continue to grow, you have more adventures. And it just opens up the world. And so I would hate for anybody to have that lifelong regret that the fear kept them,
Yep.
from moving forward.
Right. Um,
Yeah.
and I think, a lot of us, and I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I think this is a good thing. Use fear to motivate us or to run away from something or to prove
Right.
something to someone. And that's not necessarily it. So if you're going to use fear,
Right.
use
Yeah.
it to propel you to
Right.
move and take the action that you're uncomfortable with versus
Right.
stopping you from it. The fear should
Right.
be, like you said, I don't want to live an ordinary life if you have a fear of that. Or
Right.
the fear for me was, I wanted to prove to others that I could do it, right? There was a lot of
Mhm.
like stigma associated with me when I was younger. And we can get into that a little bit later here. But that's what kind of motivated me. As a young child,
Right.
to do this very, very difficult things. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove to, they say I can't, I'm going to prove to them that I can. And it was that fear of really meeting their little expectations of me,
Yeah.
their low expectations of me that
Mhm.
drove me
Mhm.
into
Mhm.
being tenacious and moving forward.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I mentioned this in another podcast, but I'm originally from Beirut, Lebanon, and I was born there, right in the smack dab in the middle of the worst part of the war. There's been a 40-year plus war going on there, and I was born right smack dab at the height of it.
Mhm.
And and when I came and to the U.S., I was 9 years old. I didn't know English, and I always told myself, even at a young age, if I could survive bombings and seeing all the blood and all the things I saw as a child, I can survive this. Like, that's really
Right.
what propelled me into doing a lot of things, into teaching myself English, because there was no ELA back then. Okay.
Right. No, there wasn't. I remember.
They put me in a really remedial,
Yeah.
class with people with disabilities, mental
Yeah.
disabilities, because they didn't know what to do with me. And
Right.
I just made it my life purpose at 10 years old, every single day, to not go to recess and not go to lunch and just sit there and in the cafeteria and not go out and just teach myself English. There was no hooked on phonics then. There was
Right.
no, phones then. It was just literally me,
Yes.
like, trying to, and my parents were checked out. They had, they were immigrants and they had their own prop issues going on. So it wasn't like I had a support system in trying to develop this
Yeah,
form.
there was no Google Translate.
No,
And I
no.
can tell you, I mean, we had a girl in my class, I remember third grade, having a girl move here from Venezuela who became a really good friend of mine, but I remember her first day in class and they're trying to communicate with her in like broken Spanish.
Right,
I can't imagine what
right.
that's like.
Right. And for me, it was Arabic, so it was completely different.
Totally. I mean, so
So
yeah,
it's
not
like
even
the alphabet's different, the way you open
yeah.
books, right? You guys open it right to left. We open it left to right. We read, the other way. It was a lot, but so anytime I face difficulties in my life, I always go back to, if I could survive that,
Right.
so I can survive anything. So whatever that in you guys propels you, whatever difficulty, we've all been through challenges.
Right.
Not a
Right.
single one of us who's made it to adulthood has not been through a challenge.
Right. And we've survived all the challenges that we have faced so far.
Exactly. And so that's the key, is looking back at your life and really taking a moment to reflect and be like, if I could go through that, I know I can go through this. Because I remember when I was going through that, I didn't think I was going to get through that. But now looking
Yeah.
back, not only did I get through it, I learned
Right.
from it, I grew from it, I'm a better person because of it, no matter how difficult. And the
Right.
fun thing is, the more heartache and difficulty you go through, the more growth, this is really what we're talking about, you,
Yes.
happens to you in life.
Right. And it's painful.
Yes.
But like I said, with that muscle, I mean, you stretch it and you tear it and that causes you to grow. And I mean, I can think of several instances that I've been through that caused me to grow. And um yeah, they were really painful. But I'm actually really grateful for those experiences because they made me into the person that I'm growing into now. And it made me into, I'm becoming the person that I want to be in business and all that sort of thing. And so I'm grateful for the experience.
Right. You're not going to get to where you are now
Mhm.
without putting yourself out there, taking the
Right.
risk,
Yeah.
seeking the discomfort, doing it anyway,
Yeah.
saying it sucks, falling on your face, scrounging, if it's not going to kill you, do it anyway,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, and again, I want to say this because it doesn't have to be like going from 0 to 100. It's about
Right.
it's about just taking that first step, because you got to take the first step before you can take the second step, before you can get to your thousandth step.
Right.
And getting to your thousandth step, you're going to look back on your first step and you're like, oh my gosh, look how far
Hmm.
I've come.
That's
And I
right.
didn't even know that I was going to get to this thousands from back then, because every time, every step I took, I fell, I failed, I got
Yeah.
up, I looked at it, I said, okay, I failed. I can't do it this way anymore. Let me try it a little bit differently and see what
Right.
happens.
Right.
And see what
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I don't know if you have this in your life, but everything that I've done in my life, I've literally did not want to do. I know it's really, I mean, I shouldn't say everything,
Uh,
but for a lot of
yeah,
things that I
yeah.
didn't really want to do, like English was my second language. I was more math and science oriented growing up, right? That was my forte. And what do I decide to do? Go to law school. I literally sat with myself and I graduated and I took some time off before I went to law school. And I was like, what is the one thing that I really have difficulty doing? And it was just English. Obviously, I've always struggled in English. And I was like, what can I do that can literally force me to develop? Because no one really taught me, because I was like stuck in third grade. And then, no one really taught me grammar and all of that.
Right.
And I was like, oh, law school. And,
A lot of
you
English
know,
in law school.
talk about seeking discomfort. Everybody looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah.
And the funny thing happened is when I was there, I found out that being more mathematically and minded and detailed oriented and extremely analytical was actually an asset. I actually thought the opposite about law school. Like English majors would be amazing, and journalism majors are really the ones that are going to succeed. Until I actually got to law school and realized
Right.
it wasn't that
Yeah.
way. Right.
No, no. No, I wouldn't say that the most of the things that I've done in life are because I don't want to do them, but I would say that I've in the path that I've walked, I have had multiple problems come up that not of my making. That and not that I'm a victim, but I'm just saying that came up that were unexpected that I was forced to walk through because I really didn't have any other choice. So um a couple of those I'll throw out and I'm not we can get into that details later, but um I my first law firm, I had a couple of business partners that went south. When I left those business partners, 3 months later I got pregnant with my youngest and I was a solo practitioner. Anyone that knows what a solo practitioner does understands that if you are a solo practitioner and you're pregnant now, this is kind of a problem. This is going to be really, really hard. Then in that pregnancy, I found out that my daughter has a chromosomal disorder, which then opened the door to hundreds of other complications that we were facing that we did deal with. My daughter was born and she had heart surgery 5 days later. All kinds of things. And that's not the end of the road for her medical interventions. We continue. She's
Right.
6 years old now, or sorry, 7. She turned 7 in November. She's 7 years old now. We continue with those. Those were not things that I ever wanted to deal with, but they've made me a stronger and I think better parent.
Right.
And so I walked through that. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I never, ever considered myself or saw myself being someone who would ever have cancer, especially at 41. I felt like I was fit and I was doing CrossFit and how could I have cancer and aggressive rare cancer? I had inflammatory breast cancer. And that is not something that I would have ever expected to have dealt with. And then in the middle of my treatment, have a toxic employee create a coup essentially of my firm and try to destroy it. I mean, I was 4 weeks away from my mastectomy surgery. None of these things did I want to
Right.
deal with, but all of these things have made me better and have made me stronger, and really had the potential to make me bitter.
Right.
But in the middle of it, and I'll give you this little piece because I feel like this was God speaking to me through my dad. I was really starting to lose faith in people. And I was really starting, I'm a very giving person and I really try to help people and I really try to help my staff and I really try to I care about them and I felt like I had just been so betrayed, and I was starting to be like, I'm not going to help people anymore. I'm going to protect myself, that sort of thing. And my dad just said to me, don't let people change you.
Yeah.
And that just stuck with me and that literally changed my mindset from right then, because yes, some people will do that but not all people, and I just didn't have the right people, and that can be a conversation for another time too. But be the person you want to be, and have faith that there are good people out there. But all of those things pushed me through growth that was real painful and that I didn't necessarily want to go through, but I'm so grateful that I did.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I really mean when I say, I did not want to do, like, I didn't want to go through it. I didn't, this isn't something that was comfortable for me, that I didn't, seek it out because it was comfortable. I actually
Right.
seeked something out, even though it put me in a very uncomfortable situation, or having very uncomfortable things happen to you and not just, fall apart and end it all or whatever, right?
Right.
Just to keep
Yeah.
yourself going. That's what I mean by, you don't want to do it, or you may not feel like you can go on. And God, that's a lot that happened to you. And I was there for part of that
A
with you.
lot, yeah, some of it, yeah, for sure.
Um, and I know how hard it was, but look where you are
So hard.
now, looking back.
Right.
And I honestly, having
Mhm.
worked with you as long as I have, I don't think you would be as successful as you are now.
Totally agree.
Remember? I remember
I
when
totally agree
we
with
were
you.
talking, I mean, I don't know, I think it was in the middle, no, it was before COVID, but you were working out of your home,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
No, I
Um,
totally agree with you.
Not that there's anything wrong with working out, but that was like before COVID, that people
Right.
didn't really do, it was just, and
Right.
there was a lot of
That's
things
not what I
happening.
wanted, though. If I
Right.
had wanted to work out of my home, that would have been great, but that's not, I wanted to build something bigger than myself. But you're right. I would never have had the personal growth that I've had to get me to where I want to be. And yeah, that stuff was so hard. But the thing is when you're walking through it, when you're in the fire, when you're in the storm, you don't have to see 1,000 feet out. Like Zaina was saying, you don't have to see that. All you need to be able to see is the next step. Just take that next step, because that's all you can do when you're going through cancer treatment. You're just one treatment at a time, one day at a time. Same thing, all of that stuff. It's one step at a time. That's all you need to see.
And do it if you don't.
And
I
then,
know when I was with you when you're doing some of the cancer stuff, you didn't want to do it. You didn't feel like doing it.
no,
You were sick.
no,
It was horrible. You get up, you do it anyway. You
you do
like,
it anyway.
oh, I'm kidding. So you go through
Yeah,
it anyway. This is such an important message. I think out of all our podcasts up to now, I feel like this is probably the
yeah,
most important one. Is
yeah.
is really building up your tenacity. And it's not some mythical thing. Oh, what's tenacity? It's literally doing the things that make you uncomfortable, leading
Hmm.
into it, not shying away and sticking your head in the sand. The one thing I know for sure, if you stuck your head in the sand, the cancer's not going to go away. It's still going to be there, even if you don't want to deal with it.
Yes, it
The
would have
thought,
taken my life.
right.
Yeah,
And that's an extreme example, but whatever it
right.
is, no, this is one thing I know for sure, and I hate to say this, this is Oprah says it, so I'm taking this from Oprah Winfrey. One thing I know for sure is that the more you try to ignore something that's uncomfortable for you, the more it's going to grow. It's never
Mhm.
ever so it snowballs. It's never
Right,
going to go away. It's going to
right.
start out as a little snowflake and you're going to ignore it. And then it's going to
Mhm.
become whatever, a snowball, and you're going to keep ignoring it. And then it's going to become, whatever, a boulder, and it's just going to keep going and then become an avalanche. And it just gets worse. And you look back and be like, oh, if only I dealt with it when it was a snowflake,
Right.
right?
I can totally
I get
relate to
really
that.
passionate about this stuff because this is so,
Yeah,
so vital to just
it is.
you know to just living in this world and being your best self and really
Mhm.
what this podcast is all about is being your
Yeah,
authentic self and really finding
yeah,
not just finding your superpower like we did, not just knowing what it is, but also fueling it. And the
mhm,
fuel is your tenacity, you're challenging yourself and you being able
yeah,
to lean into the discomfort of it.
yeah. The fuel is the fear.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's the action, it's the consistency and the action. Just so that's really our summary here,
mhm,
to kind of, kind of, and end it a little bit is and making it into a little bow for you is that the more things you do, the more things you can do. So
right.
just, I hate, I hate the saying, just do it. It sounds like such a cliche, but really just do it. Just go through the fire.
Yeah. And please, you guys, reach out to us if you're in the fire. Please reach out, message us on Facebook or on our Instagram or whatever it is, because we've been through the fire. And the purpose of this community is to walk with each other through the fire, tell you what we've learned, give you hope and encouragement and any help that we can. Because the fires are going to come for all of us.
Mhm.
We will all go through them. You know, none of us are going to avoid that. And so I just want us all to be there to be able to encourage each other. So please reach out if you have anything that you need help with, or if there's a topic you want us to cover. Please reach out and let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everybody. You have a support system here. That's why we did it. Both me and Kathleen kind of went through a lot of the stuff on our own. And then, we kind of joined forces a little bit and started helping each other and having different support systems. It's important. We want to be that support system for you guys to develop that emotional resilience. You don't necessarily have to go through it on your own, especially when there's other people like us or whoever that have gone through it.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
we've only touched on a little bit of our background that we've had to go through, but that's really why we joined forces, because we both have gone through so much. And I'm
Mhm.
confident in saying if there's nothing out there that you guys are going through that we probably either haven't gone through ourselves or something 100 times worse,
Yeah,
um, that we can, help you guys get through and overcome, right?
yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we will end it there. Thanks, everybody. We're going to post the resources in our notes section. Subscribe. You know where to find us. As always, we will see you next time, warriors. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, warriors. Next time.
Appreciate you.
Bye.